It's 2007, and young Reed declares to his class at career day that he wants to be the first person to teleport themselves in history. In reality, he is able to construct a teleporter in his garage because to his extremely high IQ. A frustrated Reed goes back to scribbling equations in his notebook after the teacher reprimands him and declares that the project was a failure since it was not practical. When Ben is the next to be summoned, he can't help but be interested in Reed's work. Later that night, Ben, who is fleeing his brother's tormenting, enters the salvage business owned by his family and hears an odd noise. Reed is actually seeking for a power converter, which he needs for his teleportation device, it turns out. He offers to show Ben the innovation in exchange for permission to use the piece, and Ben agrees. Later, Ben aids Reed in finishing the machine in his garage. Reed turns the device on after they place a toy vehicle on it, which causes their immediate surroundings to tremble and the electricity to go out. To their surprise, the toy manages to vanish while only leaving a few rocks behind. Reed and Ben exhibit an improved version of the teleportation device that can transport objects away but also return them back during the school's science fair 7 years later. In order to demonstrate, Reed steals a child's toy plane and makes it appear to vanish before reappearing coated in sand. This results in a power surge that breaks the basketball ring's glass. Unfortunately, the professors reject them because they believe they are doing magic acts rather than real science. However, Reed's gadget caught the notice of Dr. Storm and Sue, who are also attending the expo. Storm works for the Baxter Foundation, a university that receives funding from the government. He says Reed is ahead of them since his team has also transported objects into other realms, but they haven't been able to retrieve them. Sue gives Reed a test tube filled with sand that matches the sand on the plane because Reed is shocked to hear this since he had assumed he had just been sending things to different locations on Earth, and not to other dimensions. The sand has been examined by the institution, but it does not like any particles seen on Earth. Storm then extends a full scholarship to Reed at the Baxter Foundation. The following day, Ben assists Reed with moving into the foundation and presents him with a utility Swiss knife, telling him that this is where he truly belongs. Later, Reed explores the whole facility to familiarize himself with everything and is awed by the magnificent labs and the large library. When he runs across Sue, he attempts to strike up a conversation, but Reed is terrible around girls, so nothing goes well. Storm is now discussing the voyage to a purported new world with the board. He says if they can get to this other realm, they can harness its resources and perhaps even figure out how to preserve their own world. However, after reviewing the reports, government scientist Dr. Allen recognizes the name Victor Von Doom and is dubious of it because the last time Victor worked for them, he set fire to all of Storm's data servers before quitting. Victor has a lot of talent and built their version of the machine, so Allen is prepared to give him another shot, but Storm must agree to strictly watch over him. Following the meeting, Storm visits Victor and makes an effort to win him back. Victor first says no, but he later agrees after learning that Reed was able to salvage the situation and that Sue will be joining the squad. A group of scientists are helping Reed and Sue create a larger version of his contraption back in the laboratory. They must be careful since Sue learns that Reed's model was tearing a hole in the fabric of space and time, which may result in a black hole and devour the entire world. Victor and Storm eventually show up. Sue and Victor show Reed an image they captured from the other world on their most recent attempt after making introductions. Victor doesn't believe that Earth deserves to be rescued, and Sue playfully refers to him as Dr. Doom for being a pessimist, despite Storm's explanation that this new planet may be utilized to save their own. Johnny, Storm's troubled son, is taking part in an unauthorized auto race in the meanwhile. Since speed is his greatest friend, he is really performing quite well, but just as he is ready to win, his car's engine blows apart, causing him to collide with an electric pole. Later, once Johnny returns to racing, Storm picks him up from the hospital. Storm informs his son that he won't get his vehicle back unless he works for him, and they dispute about how Johnny is wasting his potential since Storm believes Johnny is meant for higher things. Without any other options, Johnny decides to join the Foundation staff. Weeks go by as everyone works hard for one another and develops a tight bond, while Victor starts to feel envious when he sees Reed and Sue becoming closer. The construction of the teleportation device is finally complete, and the crew names it the Quantum Gate, after many long and difficult days. Reed thanks Ben for everything he has done for him and sends him a photo of it. The board and Alan show up the next day to see a live demonstration. After a few anxious seconds, they receive a video feed showing what the other dimension, which they refer to as Planet Zero, looks like. They then send a monkey for the initial organic test. When the monkey eventually reappears healthy, the experiment is said to have been successful and secure. Alan congratulates the team, but he promptly declines when the teens request to go next. NASA men will be sent in place of the creators, who must remain on site to control the device. Reed, Johnny, and Victor decide to share a drink after the board departs in order to forget their disappointment. However, they never stop griping about not being allowed to visit the realm they independently found, which should grant them, first step, privileges. When Reed steps up, he persuades everyone to use the machine alone and sneak around everyone else. The other two concur, and when Reed realizes that Ben was also an original inventor, he summons him to come along. Everyone dons their gear and board the machine pods a little while later. Sue, who is working in the office at the time, goes to the lab to investigate after hearing a warning that the gate is being activated. The 4 males had already vanished by the time she gets there. The men on Planet Zero are astounded by this brand new dimension. The Earth splits up as Reed and Ben raise the American flag, revealing a glimmering green light underneath it. They next inspect the area where Victor believes the energy is concentrating. As the other 3 descend and discover a material that resembles green lava, Johnny stays at the top of the cliff to serve as the anchor. Victor learns that it is responding to a physical stimulation when he touches it. Victor then dips his palm more deeper, only for the material to detonate and set off an earth eruption. Victor collapses while still hanging on the rope as the 3 men sprint back to the rope and instantly begin to climb with Johnny holding their weights. Reed pulls him up, but the gushing green fluid reaches Victor and covers his body, forcing Reed to release his hold. Victor regrettably falls back to the ground as a result of the material melting off the rope. After rejoining Johnny to return to their pods, Reed, Ben, and Johnny continue their ascent. Re-entry, however, is not functioning. Sue receives their signals back at that point and initiates the return, but she doesn't respond quickly enough. As a result, Johnny suddenly catches fire and Ben is pelted with rocks. When the machine returns, it bursts and produces a shockwave that leaves Sue unconscious and forces the entire city to go dark. When Reed wakes up, he discovers Johnny on fire and Ben trapped between the rocks. Reed starts to crawl even though his own legs are trapped behind a pillar since he believes this would let him escape. But when he turns around, he notices his legs are extending out strangely, and he faints. The next day at Area 57, the researchers are putting Reed through tests to see how well he can stretch. Every time he awakens, he becomes too emotional, causing the researchers to put him back to sleep. When Storm visits his kids, he notices Sue's fading into and out of the visible spectrum. Storm feels bad for Johnny since he is still burning when he wakes up, panics, and explodes. Reed awakens once again after hearing Ben yelling for assistance. He swiftly lowers his arms to free himself from the restraints, then crawls through a vent until he reaches Ben's location. Reed is shocked to see that Ben has transformed into a human rock. After assuring Ben that he would find a solution, Reed flees the facility by himself, utilizing his skills to effortlessly stop any guards who stand in his way. At that point, the whole institution is made aware of his departure. After that, Alan sees Ben and tricks him into believing Reed has left them. He claims that Area 57 and the government can work together to find a solution to their problems, but in exchange the teenagers will require assistance with their military duty. After a year, Ben, Johnny, and Sue have mastered their powers and are valuable tools for the government, particularly Ben, who is dispatched to combat zones to destroy enemy tanks. Now that Sue has the ability to make other items invisible and to build a force field, Johnny can fly. Alan talks about it with the Pentagon and suggests a different quantum gate project that would give the US military more authority. Johnny and Sue disagree over what they ought to do with their talents in Area 57. Sue doesn't want to be used as a tool and believes they should hold off until they are confident they can be cured as promised. Johnny wants to utilize his powers for something helpful, like going on missions like Ben. Later, Alan demonstrates the quantum gate to the Pentagon operatives who had come with him. The generals agree to support the endeavor, but only if Ben and Johnny are given additional opportunities to serve on the battlefield. As soon as Storm learns of this, he calls to Sue and tells her that they need to find Reed right away since he is the only one who can make the gate function and obtain a cure. Storm doesn't like the notion of the government using any of his children as weapons. Sue starts following Reed's online activities right away in an effort to spot a trend. She learns that he has been gathering scrap metal and keeping himself constantly informed about Ben. She must now wait patiently for his next move. In the meantime, Reed continues to purchase scrap metal while constantly altering his appearance to avoid being seen by surveillance cameras. He's been gathering components to construct a new gate, but Sue finds him the next time he goes onto his computer. Area 57 sends a squad to apprehend Reed using Sue's intelligence, but they unintentionally activate his security system. Reed swiftly enters the woods and is confronted by troops, but because to his training, he effortlessly defeats them all. When the troops are unable to capture them, they free Ben to complete the mission. Ben is wounded and gives Reed a head, but as Reed attempts to explain that he still cares and has been hunting for a cure. Reed expresses regret for abandoning everyone and pledges to discover a cure on the way back. Ben is aware that Alan will not allow them to be fixed because they are valuable in this state. Sue talks to Reed when they get to Area 57 and persuades him to assist them in fixing the gate by telling him that now is his time to see the impact of his labor. He ultimately decides to assist and starts working more diligently than before on Quantum Gate 2. Johnny and Reed rejoin when it's time for a fresh teleportation challenge, and unlike Ben, Johnny is glad to see his old friend again. The machine then sends a fresh crew to Planet Zero, which has undergone significant transformation during the last year. They are startled as they notice a human form coming toward them. It is Victor, who has somehow managed to survive for all of this time. Victor is taken to an examination room as soon as Alan tells the workers to bring him back. When they get a closer look at him, they realize that the green light is visible below the suit that has merged with his body. In exchange for Victor telling them everything he knows about Planet Zero, Alan offers to heal him. Victor claims that the location itself kept him alive and given him great strength before going off the rails, and used his newly discovered telepathy to kill everyone in the room. Victor then exits the building and travels about it, killing each and everyone he comes across without any regret. When an alarm suddenly sounds, Ben briefly believes Reed is attempting to flee once more. The siblings search for their father when Johnny inadvertently smacks an invisible Sue while being on guard. Victor is attempting to return to Planet Zero at that time, while Storm is attempting to stop him. The siblings must see Victor killing Storm brutally when they finally arrive. Reed and Ben then go up and try to reason with Victor, but Victor just telepathically pushes them away before getting inside the machine and going back to Planet Zero. In order to generate a vortex that would transport everything from Earth to the other realm, he begins overloading the quantum gate there. Sue puts up a force field around herself and her two pals so they can pursue Johnny as he flies to the Planet Zero portal in a fit of rage. Knowing how the vortex functions, Reed concludes that energy is being created from the stuff from Earth, and the only way to stop this is to stop Victor, who is the source of the energy. Ben and Johnny each launch a separate attack with all their strength, but Victor can easily defeat them with a single finger lift. In order to put out Johnny's fire, he covers him with smaller boulders and dirt. Ben is then immobilized by larger rocks that are fastened to him. Sue constructs a substantial force field in the background to stop earthly debris from entering the quantum gate. Victor notices this and sends sand and tiny rocks to find Sue's hiding place. Her force field is overwhelmed by the particles, and she falls as a result of the added weight. As Victor applies the green stuff over Reed's body to make him loose like old rubber, Reed tries to persuade him out of it once more, but his only response is to beg Reed to name him Doom. Sue regains consciousness at that point and attempts to assault Victor directly, but he just uses his abilities to hold her down. Reed musters his power and recovers control of his body after seeing the imminent death of his buddies. This enables him to assault Victor and toss him down a cliff. Victor quickly stands back up, but this time Ben is waiting for him with a big boulder that he tosses to create a distraction. Sue encloses him in a force field at that point, which Johnny fills with flames to destroy. Sue's force barrier is broken by Victor using his powers, but Reed then pursues him and engages him in a hand-to-hand struggle. This proves to be yet another diversion as Ben then pushes Victor into the machine as Sue emerges from invisibility. Finally, Johnny destroys all the pillars, which causes Victor to become pure energy. The four pals sprint back to the machine to leave before the gate closes after winning the battle. Later, the Pentagon praises them for saving the world and encourages them to join their army, but the buddies politely decline and threaten to get violent if they aren't given some space. At least they are given a sizable lab to work in and acknowledge that they must come up with a team name. Reed declares that they will be known as the Fantastic Four, in response to Ben's remark.